He twisted her arm like she was trash, you know? No hesitation, no hint of humanity, just a raw, ugly motion then that snapped sharp and hollow, ringing out through the park like a warning shot. She didn't even scream, just stared, her face unreadable, like all the pain in the world had settled somewhere you couldn't see. There she was, a black girl laid out in the dirt, arm bent at some impossible angle. And that Kofi just stood there over her, puffed up like he'd taught her a lesson the world needed to learn. But what he didn't know, her father is a world champion fighter, and he was about to walk into this nightmare. You ever wonder what kind of state you live in if this sort of thing happens? Sometimes you see a moment like this and think, no way, not here. But the truth is, it's everywhere unless someone stands up. That's why you should watch this all the way through, because this time, justice doesn't stay quiet. His fist crashed down on her defiance, and the park once full of laughter and every day noise fell silent in a heartbeat. All that was left was the sound of a young girl's broken breathing, each inhale like a question she'd been forced to answer her whole life. She just lay there, staring up at the cop, arm limp and twisted, but she didn't cry. You could see the years of forced strength written in her face, a silent promise that she'd been here before, maybe not this exact place, but somewhere close. The real question, though, wasn't about how strong she was, but how long the world would let moments like this go on unheard. Just that morning, this park was a scene out of any American summer, kids darting between benches, old men talking trash about baseball, mothers chatting with one eye on the playground. She was right in the middle of it, laughing with her friends, her skin shining in the sun, looking like the whole world belonged to her. Her friends were going on about the fall dance, who was asking whom, what they were going to wear, but there was something tense floating in the air, like the kind of breeze that gets under your skin and won't let go. Then he showed UPA cop, moving through the park with that swagger that says, I don't trust you, even if he never says a word. He zeroed in on their little group, something about them setting him off. Maybe he didn't like their laughter, or their confidence, or maybe he just didn't like them. Either way, he cut through their joy with a barked order, move along, kids, break it up. Most of her friends scattered, scared and obedient, but she just stood her ground, arms crossed, chin up, not giving him the satisfaction of fear. He glared down at her, sneering, what's in the bag? Like she was smuggling something worse than a lunch and some library books. She looked him in the eye, voice shaking just a little. It's just school stuff, but she didn't back down. That's when his whole face changed, like he'd been waiting for an excuse. Let me see it, he said, more threat than request. When she tried to pull her bag away, his hands were on her, yanking, twisting, no warning, no care. Then the snap. You know that moment when the whole world just stops? That was it. Even the birds seemed to freeze. The people nearby some pulled out their phones. Others just stared, torn between wanting to help and being too scared to move. But nobody could look away. The cop, proud and posturing, stood over her like he was daring the world to challenge his version of justice. And in that silence, the real story began to spread, because even if no one spoke, everyone felt it. Something was very, very wrong. The phones kept recording. The old man with his cane muttered there was no call for that. And a mother covered her child's eyes, torn between wanting to protect and wanting to bear witness. A teenager called 911, voice quivering, she's hurt, please someone hurry. You could feel the officer's discomfort as the cameras caught every angle, but he didn't step back. He wore his authority like a shield, but it was starting to crack. Then, finally, someone, Mavita girl from her friend group, dark braids swinging like a flag, dropped to her knees beside her. Don't move, help's coming, she whispered, voice shaky but strong. Then the local dog walker, a wiry guy with a history of speaking up, challenged the officer. She's just a kid. What you doing? The cop fired back, suspected contraband, but it was hollow, and everyone knew it. She closed her eyes against the chaos, trying to hold onto her father's voice in her memory, the way he'd taught her that silence could be power. In the distance, the sirens began to wail. When the paramedics arrived, the crowd had grown thick and angry. The officer stepped back, suddenly smaller under the weight of so many eyes. As they lifted her onto a stretcher, her arm carefully cradled, She locked eyes with the crowd, telling them with her silence, "Don't let this be just another forgotten day." The cop tried to explain himself to a fellow officer, but the words hung dead in the air. Her friend turned to the crowd, shouting, "She didn't do anything. We were just talking now this." People murmured in agreement, the videos already flying across social media. Later, in a sterile hospital room, her world shrank to a monitor's steady beep and her own thoughts looping through what she'd say to her father. She didn't feel brave, just angry that this still happened, that her skin made her a target. She wasn't thinking about being a symbol, just about how she would tell her father everything and how he'd understand. Her father, halfway around the world, felt the impact of her message like a punch to the gut. He'd faced every opponent imaginable, but nothing prepares you for the fear that comes when your child is hurt. He boarded a flight that night, every second a test of patience, knowing that this was the fight he was always meant to face. When he arrived, the hospital seemed to hold its breath. He found her in bed, arm bandaged, eyes bright but tired. He sat beside her, the space between them filled with everything they didn't need to say out loud. "Hey, champ," he whispered. She managed a smile, soft but steady. "I'm okay, Dad." He squeezed her hand, promising, "This isn't over. It's just the beginning." As they pieced together the story, her version, the footage, witness accounts, a team formed around them. A sharp lawyer named Lisa, a firebrand activist named Raphael, neighbors, strangers turned friends. They built a case, but also a movement. The videos had already sparked outrage, online hashtags, news segments, community rallies. At the first rally, the father spoke not as a champion, but as a parent. "This isn't just about my daughter. It's about every child who's been hurt for daring to exist." When she spoke, her voice was clear. "I don't want to be a victim. I want to be a voice for change." The crowd roared, and their story shifted from tragedy to call to action. Then, an unexpected twist. Maria, a quiet mother who'd witnessed it all, came forward. "I saw everything," she told their lawyer. Her testimony was the missing paisea, strangers' courage breaking the silence. Now, armed with evidence and united by community, they faced the trial together. In court, the officer stuck to his story, talking about protocol, but Maria's words and the girl's strength rang louder. It wasn't easy. There was backlash, nasty messages, threats, online trolls. But for every hater, there were 10 supporters showing up at rallies, offering help, sharing the truth. The case drew headlines, sparking debates at kitchen tables and city council meetings alike. When the verdict finally came, the courtroom was packed, faces old and new, all holding their breath. The jury delivered justice, not just for her, but for every person who'd ever been told to sit down and stay silent. Afterward, father and daughter walked out together, no longer just survivors, but catalysts. The world watched as they took the stage at another rally, arms raised together. "Change is possible," he said, "but only if we refuse to look away." She smiled at the crowd, voice ringing with hope. "We're not done yet. Are you with us?" And that's how a moment of violence in a sunny park sparked something so much bigger. Now, let me ask you, if you saw this happen in your community, would you have the courage to speak up? Do you think justice is served, or does the fight still go on? Drop your thoughts below, because the story isn't over, and maybe your voice is exactly what's needed next.